So is it critical or is it not important at all? Actually, the truth is somewhere in between. Obviously, the visibility of your podcast is something that counts. You need for people, when they're searching for new podcasts, you need to be one of the podcasts they find by topic. Otherwise, they're not going to click on you and listen to you unless someone recommends the podcast. So yes, visibility counts and can't be ignored. It needs to be a part of the plan. I fall on the side of it's not critical, and I'll get to that in about 60 seconds. Quick story. My podcast, Stories and Strategies, originally was just called Stories and Strategies. And it's a podcast designed for people in the public relations and marketing industry, or industries, depending on how you approach that.
That's great.
Podcast was doing reasonably well. People were finding it. But it was growing slowly. I changed the title in all the apps to Stories and Strategies for Public Relations and Marketing. And sure enough, suddenly the downloads started going through the roof. So absolutely, keywords do count. The way to go about that is to think about your listener's journey and what are the keywords that they're going to use to find your podcast. If you have a podcast about women in business is a fantastic title for your podcast. A little bit taken, a little bit used. You might have to be more creative than that. If you have a podcast about sandcastles, the Sandcastles podcast is probably a killer, or just Sandcastles, so you're not using podcast in the name, which is kind of redundant. Or you could be creative. Real talk about sandcastles. It's not very creative at all. Real talk is horribly overused, but good to have those keywords in. And backing up some of this is some research that was done by OSHA. Now, keep in mind, this is a company that makes its living in part on podcast visibility and using keywords. But what they found in their study is that 65% of the top 10 podcasts feature the searched keyword prominently in their show title. So if it's about sandcastles, Sandcastles was appearing in the show title. Incorporating the primary keyword into the show name elevates the podcast by an average of 5 positions in searchability results. That sounds pretty important. And another stat, using your keyword, your main keyword, at least 5 times in your podcast bio or show description can boost your podcast by an average of 9 positions in the search results. I actually found that one amazing and went through all the podcasts that we produce and host, and I changed the podcast bio to incorporate those keywords 5 times or more. I took that one as pretty important. There also still has to be a readability factor to this. The reason I don't fall on the side of you should put all your resources into SEO is if you had that podcast about sandcastles and you had the Sandcastles podcast and someone went into Apple or Spotify or YouTube and searched for sandcastles, if you're a smaller podcast still, you're not going to come up as number 1. Somebody that has a podcast about stuff to do at the beach, let's say it's a much bigger podcast, it's a network podcast, they are going to come up number 1. There's a reason for that. The algorithms are not just designed to find the keywords. The algorithms are designed to support the app in supporting the searcher so that they can find the most relevant materials for them the fastest. So if that Things to Do at the Beach podcast is just a bigger podcast, they've spent resources on advertising or hiring good producers or promo swaps, things like that, and they're just a bigger podcast, they're going to come up number 1 in the search, not yours, despite you've got the perfect title for that particular search. So that's where I come down is SEO counts. Visibility is obviously important. Spend some of your time and resources on SEO, but don't spend all your time and resources on that. It's not the hill to die on, and readability still counts, particularly as these algorithms become more and more sophisticated, and they're not just looking for keywords, they're looking for sentimentality. That's the change. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit subscribe. We would love it if you did. We are newer and growing, and I really appreciate when you hit subscribe. That's another way, of course, to feed the algorithm, as it tells people that this is a channel that has good stuff. Happy podcasting.